Dr. Loren M. Hill, your academic career advancement coach. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 2. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, and while everyone's talking about balance, I want to talk about the emotional cost of being excellent. Nobody tells you how exhausting it is to essentially hold it all together, to be the one who answers the emails, confronts the students, confronts and comforts, right? Stays home late at night, trying to figure out what the next step is, all into the morning, but then you are the first one in the office and then the last one to leave, and you're showing up in the office smiling, showing up in the classroom smiling, showing up for meetings smiling. Whether you're the department chair, faculty, administrator, or even a coach supporting the people in these roles, this is the episode for you. It's not really about a burnout checklist. It's about finally naming what this pressure feels like and what it takes to move through it with clarity. Now, the academic culture teaches us that excellence really means endurance. Like, essentially, we've all heard publish or perish, right? So, right there, we're starting off with like, we got to do it, we got to do it. And publishing takes a lot out of us. Our scholarship takes a lot of it. Like, there are some institutions where publishing isn't really at the forefront, but scholarship is. And so scholarship can look like a lot of different things. Many of us are going from conference to conference, we're supporting students, we are doing our research, plus we're teaching, we're advising, and then we are doing our institutional service plus our public service, right? So again, the academic culture teaches us that we have to endure. We got to be visible, we got to be valuable, but underneath is really a very different truth. Many of us are unraveling quietly. The demands seem to increase year over year. We're all now sort of taught to do more with less, whether that's funding, whether that's labs, whether it's whatever, right? I've talked to so many people, and I remember myself when, like, seat caps went up, right? First, we were used to having X number of students in the classroom. Then it ended up being like, year over year, you could see it start creeping up more. And so now our teaching load is heavier. The expectation around publishing is greater. And there are some reasons for that happening, and we'll get to that shortly. But I think that this whole, this foundation of excellence, meaning endurance, takes a heavy toll on our mental health and our physical wellness. You all know that I'm also a licensed clinical psychologist, so I really like to call out the mental tolls that some of this takes on us. Now, I remember the day I received my first rank promotion. Now, first of all, a lot of work went into that. And when it happened, it felt like a milestone, but I had a mask on. And what do I mean by that? Okay, I accomplished this thing. I really did a lot to get there. But then I thought, I don't know if I'm safe, right? So we all know, or not all of us, but we come to find out one way or another that our rank follows us, which is a sense of security, because once you get your promotion in rank, your rank follows you no matter where you go, right? But then rank doesn't equal tenure. We know that as well. So what's next, right? And okay, tenure, there's some security around that, but I think that some people are starting to quietly feel like that there's tenure, but there's also kind of, you're trapped, right? Because tenure doesn't follow you. It means you're there, you're guaranteed, but not always. And not that it's going to work out to be the best thing for you after all. I know people who've been like, I got it, but I'm out, and for good reason. And so it's not all it's always cracked up to be. But again, you know, I had started moving through, and when I got this promotion, I really didn't have time to sort of look at it and reflect and go like, wow, you really did the thing, right? You did it because people were saying like, what's next and how do you plan on staying on track? And I was like, dang, can I just take a breath? I'm already kind of worn out from this. I still have to move through my faculty commitments and, do all of those things. But at the same time, I got to try to figure out what's going on with my career. And that's where oftentimes we miss the mark, right? Because we're very committed to what's going on institutionally, but we don't really have a strategy or blueprint or someone to help us like, great, you're doing that, but make sure you take care of your career as well. So as we're trying to manage all of these things, we're exhausted, we're sort of like frazzled, and we're still moving forward. So remember, burnout doesn't always look like withdrawal. Sometimes it looks like achievement, overfunctioning, always showing up until, of course, your nervous system says enough. And for some of us, that happens sooner rather than later. So be mindful. Think about this. Do you find that you're always tired but still pushing through? Have you found that you've been sick or just not quite yourself more than usual? A few actual things like weight gain, weight loss, hair loss, always on edge, no time for yourself, not doing the things that you enjoy because you're always thinking about work, right? When was the last time you were able to really reflect on your accomplishments and feel good and truly sort of revel in what you've done? If you're like most of us, that doesn't happen too often because, again, we are just showing up for our students, showing up for the institution, and we don't really have the space to show up for ourselves. And that can be mentally exhausting. Now, let's shift to the administrative perspective, right? So, administrators such as department chairs, deans, those who are tasked with leadership, and and I want to clarify because I do feel that many of us are in leadership roles that are formal leadership roles, but then there's the informal ones. So for the sake of this part of the conversation, I really want to address the formal leadership role. So if you're a department chair, a dean, a provost, um, you all can relate to this because we hold space for others, students, colleagues, the entire team, but often we're not held ourselves, right? So, as a chair, I learned that power doesn't always come with protection. You make decisions that really impact people, carry institutional weight, and you often have to do it alone, right? You are just told, go figure it out. So, here's an example. Everything in my department was going very well. And I mean, very well, right? Enrollment was up. We had exceeded our projections. Faculty was feeling good about themselves, and our students were, pretty happy. All of our KPIs were great. And then I got called in. to the dean's office to say that I wasn't doing enough and I needed to do better. I was like, okay, uh, what is better, right? And so I'm all about like, action items, strategy, tell me what to do, or tell me where we're going, and maybe I could figure it out. And I was just told, just go figure it out. And I'm like, well, I don't know where we're going with this, right? And so then I was just kind of left grappling, and I found that other chairs and sometimes deans are also trying to figure it out as well. And that may be because we're not given the full picture, right? So, what I later found out in that instance was that some of the other, maybe a little bit more prestigious departments had missed their projections. And those of us who were doing better were essentially told, well, we weren't told, like I said, we figured out that we needed to carry the weight for these other departments. And so that can be challenging because, yeah, we've probably been in positions where we've had to sort of take one for the team, but I feel like if we were told a bit more and brought into the processes, it wouldn't feel so weird, right? Like, what are we trying to do here? And why are we, why is this all secretive? And so that comes to sort of the next point. There are times when you won't be told everything. There's times where you won't be told anything. And then there's times where you'll be told stuff and you have to keep the secrets. So you have to hold institutional secrets like budget shortfalls, student and personnel problems, why you have to keep people there, students and personnel who are performing poorly or behaving badly, legal issues, and the list goes on and on. And so sometimes your mental energy can be sapped by just trying to figure out what the heck is going on in this place. And so, again, there's times where I understand where you can't have, as people are so fond of saying right now, full transparency, but please just give us enough information so we know how to do our jobs. But, that's not always the case. So that leads me to the next part. Let's talk about the myth of neutrality. The idea is that to lead fairly, you have to be emotionally detached, and that is not sustainable. Um, I'm often telling people who are able to find the space to give voice to their feelings. And even if they're not yet able to give voice to it, but I can see it and then I help name it, I'm like, welcome to being a human being, right? So there are times when you can be, stern, and it may seem like, you don't, the whoever's on the receiving end may feel like you don't care, but you have to have some type of boundary. Otherwise, you're just going to fall apart. It takes its toll, but it's not sustainable, right? Essentially, it erodes authenticity and it isolates those who care about us most, and we care about them because they will determine you as, oh, you don't care, or you're just cold, or you don't get it. And I've worked with enough leaders who have said, that those were some really difficult decisions, but I had to hold it in, right? So I remember early on being told when I was going into administration roles that, as a faculty, my priority was my students in my classroom, right? That was it. I mean, not to minimize it, but that was my focus. Then, as a chair, my priority was the department, right? So you start to scale it up. And then, as I was being prepared for the position of dean, I was then told that, okay, now it's the college that is your priority. So, as I reflected on this, I remember thinking, wow, how do I distance myself from the people who I've been working closely with as I have promoted up, because I was still at the same institution. But even when I moved to a different institution as an administrator, I've always been a people person. So I know that whether it's student, faculty, staff, people who we are engaging with in the community, it's all people, right? So yes, there's budgets, numbers, enrollments, things that drive the business of higher ed, but that business is made up of people, not parts, right? So it can be challenging, right? Am I not supposed to care about what happens to these people? Now, look, now I am going to use the phrase full transparency. There are some times when I was like, yes, sign me up for helping this person to the door because they need to go. But that was rare, right? For the most part, when I had to make difficult decisions about budgeting and, who could stay and who we might have to help go, it I still knew that that was a person who had a whole life. And so as I continued to move upward and think about the repercussions of what is happening to these people based on the decisions that I made, it became increasingly difficult to manage the stress. Many academic leaders are praised for grace under pressure, but that grace comes at a cost. Here's where I shift to my work as a coach and why I bring the International Coaching Federation lens, ICF, to support those who lead. And remember, leadership can be in the classroom, it can be over a department, and it could be institutionally. What coaching gives us is the space that most institutions don't. One where the titles come off and the truth comes out, right? Now, it's interesting to me that while you can get a leadership role, or we're encouraged again for academics means excellence and endurance, we're not often given support, right? So we're told, get it done, figure it out, and then you're like, okay, how do I do it? So you got to navigate that space alone. And then if you try to connect to someone else, oftentimes they're trying to figure it out as well, right? So this is where I think coaching is important. And I will forever be grateful for the circumstances that led me to receiving coaching. Even though it didn't feel good at the time, I was glad upon further reflection that I had an experience with coaching so I could determine, like, this would be great if more people got it and it was supportive versus punitive, right? So in the coaching space, we're able to kind of talk about what's good and what's not so good. I've coached leaders who have essentially said they've outgrown the version of themselves that got them here. And that's where the work can begin, right? You can reflect. I really can do this, but I don't focus so much on this part in my coaching is optimizing performance. Because I think that if I'm able to help somebody come back to their true self, then their performance will ultimately be optimized. right? So this is more transformational and less transactional. Here's a few tips that I think, micro practices that I recommend. Start a weekly reflection that begins with, what did I carry this week that no one saw? And as you think about that, it'll give you some insight into, where do I need to give space for something that I'm packing down or people aren't seeing or I really need to honor, right? Think again about boundaries. And I encourage boundaries that begin with body wisdom. So, what do I mean by that? What does it feel like, right? What does it feel like to say yes or no? And that takes a little work to get to because we've often been told to kind of, discount that piece of ourselves. Let's reframe rest as a leadership strategy and not a personal indulgence, right? So all of these things kind of go together. And I've heard a few things, some of you may have heard them as well. Some I support, some I don't support. One of the number ones I don't support is I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, if you don't sleep, you will be dead. I'll let that sit right there. So everybody has a different physiological makeup that requires different amounts of sleep. So while there's some averages around sleep, you know best what works for you. So whether you're sleeping 2 hours or 10 hours, if you wake up and you still feel tired, you're not resting. So think about sleep hygiene, right? Sleep hygiene is a part of rest, but that's not the only part of rest. Rest means stepping away from task as well. So think about, what rest feels like to you. Are you able to just sit with yourself? Are you able to go outside? Are you able to stay inside? Are you able to do an activity? So think about incorporating rest. Connect to your support group, right? And when you're with your support group, be mindful to set aside time to be positive, right? I know that there's a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot going on with regards to higher ed right now. But I always say there's always a lot going on. Depends on what institution you're at, what enrollment is looking like, what the budgets are looking like, but set aside some time to think about what's going right, right? What's going right in your institution? What's going right in your life, right? Reflect on your accomplishments and spend some time there. Now, if this resonates with you, if you've been praised for caring too much, I want you to know that you're not alone. There is space for your humanity and your leadership. There's space for clarity without collapse. And if you'd like to work together or simply talk about what's underneath the surface, my door is open. Share this with a colleague, tag someone who's holding a lot right now, and most of all, take care of the person that's behind the title, and that's you. Once again, I am Dr. Loren Hill. I am your academic career advancement coach. Thank you for spending time with me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.